I'm Melissa Bell, and welcome to the Business Roundup, where we catch up with the movers and shakers in the business world. Today, joining me is Lauren Guess and Nora Bryant. They are partners at State Intel PR Agency. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us. We're excited to be here.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I know right now we were talking a little bit about it before. We had COVID. I think people reassessed, the work situation, the work environment, and being, at home and having to be at home, and learning how to do like this digital type of transformation that we did where people could stay and do their work from their, homes and from their desks. And that kind of changed the way we look at like work and trying to restructure our life. So, before we kind of get started, you want to tell us a little bit about your backgrounds and how you came to start the agency.
Yes, most definitely. I won't start too far back, but uh, I was a public relations major from the local university here in Bowling Green, Kentucky, Western Kentucky University. Go Tops! And then when I graduated college, just like any young 20-something, I just looked for anything and everything that was available and would hire me with no experience. I did have a couple of internships in tourism, and so I knew kind of like, okay, I really love that industry. But if you meet anybody in the tourism industry, once they're in, they usually never get out because the jobs are so fun. So it's not an industry where you see a lot of availability. About a year after graduating, a couple of jobs had opened. Someone that I'd interned for reached out and was like, "Hey, I think you'd be really good for this." So that's where I started, I would say, my professional career in tourism was with Visit Lex in Lexington, Kentucky. They are absolutely wonderful, gave me a ton of experience. And then, as you know, like we're going to talk about today, COVID happened and tourism, hospitality across the country was definitely turned upside down. Nobody knew exactly what the pandemic was going to do to the industry as a whole. And that's when I found myself moving back to Bowling Green with my boyfriend at the time, but now my husband. And in all of that, my husband and I were part of the pandemic baby boom. We did have our first child, our daughter. And so while we were here in insurance for a little bit, it was just that, like that, I would call it a kind of like a gap job in the pandemic. And then the local tourism job opened, and I was able to start there as the director of communications. And this is kind of where Stay and Tell begins. My husband is in the National Guard. He's also a police officer. And if anybody knows about that life, those schedules are not normal at all. So, being a working mom, I struggled a lot, especially when he was away for trainings, balancing how I take care of my daughter and get to the office every day. I found myself would leave the office at 5. By the time I got all the way to her daycare, she was the last one being picked up at 5:30, and then again all the way across town to get to our house, not starting on dinner until 6:15. She was young, and so she was asleep by 7:30. And I'm like, "What? What is this life?" And then coming out of the pandemic, you realize, especially in my role, a lot of my work can be done remotely. I can meet with people anywhere. It's a very active, it's a very front facing person job. And so you don't need the office or the desk or the strict hours of 8 to 5. And so that's when I started exploring kind of what my options were as a young mom. And I feel like now I'm talking forever, but
No, it's important.
hope, yeah.
Good background.
Yeah, hopefully you can cut some of that and make it shorter. So I'd been at my job for about a year and a half, and that my husband had just gotten back from training. And I was like, I cannot do this anymore. I need more flexibility. I can't go to the office every day and still show up as a mom, as a wife, as a friend, as anything. So through mutual connections and my network, I received some support to kind of go off on my own. At this time, State and Tell wasn't necessarily formed. I knew I wanted to go in that direction, but I really owe it to my network, and we'll talk about a couple of them soon, for supporting me and taking that leap and being able to go out and kind of start a small business. And so a few months in, I decided, okay, this is going well. I had a couple of more phone calls outside of my immediate network that really helped me take that leap. And we talked about, I think in the title too, is the gig economy. I
Mhm,
wouldn't say that's how I started. It was essentially, they were gigs,
mhm.
which helped me launch Stay and Tell. So I got to the point where I was like, okay, this is, as women, I think we second guess ourselves a lot. At first, I was like, there's no way this is going to like be a thing. And then as it took off, I decided, I'm like, okay, I probably should think about like, what does this small business look like? What does I need to go through like the branding process? And lo and behold, Stay and Tell was born. I took on some of my first, I would say first official clients, but they've always all been clients. And I did that for about a year and a half. And then that's when Lauren came on. But I actually met Lauren when I was leaving my tourism job. She was stepping into my role.
I applied for her
Yes.
job.
And
Um,
so it's where we met.
that's where we met.
Yeah.
So yes, I was, and I'm hearing her talk through her story, and I've heard it before, but our experiences mirror each other very well as far as like how we kind of all happen. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Keep you. Our experiences mirror each other as far as like what happened during the pandemic and then our careers after the fact. I worked in Louisville for several years. I worked in the agency scene in PR, and if anyone watching is familiar with that, very, high stakes. At times, it felt a lot of fun, a lot of great experience. You get to work on great clients, but there's definitely a level of expectation that always has to be met, and with that can come some stress and burnout. And so I was interested in moving back home where I'm from, which is South Central Kentucky, where Nora and I both are now. And I found a job right before COVID. COVID hit, the job changed, as a lot of people can relate to that. And I found myself kind of missing that agency lifestyle a little bit more, the more fast paced that, every day is different because you're working on different clients and different projects. And through COVID, I was able to find a job back in Louisville, but still be in Bowling Green. And that was with another agency. So back in the agency scene. And I also had a COVID baby. And so I was experiencing the same thing Nora mentioned, which was, okay, I'm balancing this new normal, which is what we called it. And I feel like we've never really gotten back to exactly normal, exactly what it was pre-pandemic. I'm trying to get used to this new normal. I have a new baby, a remote job, which I loved and was very fulfilling at the time. But then things started shifting back to in person. And I was finding myself working in a company that was predominantly going back in person in Louisville, and I was one of the only remote employees. And I wasn't getting the fulfillment that I would have had everyone been remote. I was feeling like, oh, I'm missing out on some opportunities because I'm not in the office, which is it was going to happen. Like I knew that this day was going to come. So I was looking for something in town. I was ready to kind of, spread my wings a little more in my local community and kind of get out of the Louisville scene. I love Louisville. It'll always have a special place in my heart, but I knew my husband and I were going to be here for the long haul. And so I really needed to start investing in my network here. Saw the job posting where Nora was leaving and I applied, and through mutual friends, we actually were able to connect and talk beforehand. And she gave me the lay of the land and explained a little bit about tourism. And I had some tourism adjacent clients during my time in agency. So I did have the relevant experience and inevitably ended up getting the job, and she trained me. And so we spent several days together training for this new role and her walking me through some of her tactics and the things that she did during her time at this tourism entity. And I mean, I don't know how she felt, but I was like, I really like her. We clicked well. That tourism entity brought us together, but we bonded more so over the fact our skills really complemented each other well. And the area where we live, South Central Kentucky, even though we have this fabulous journalism and PR program at WKU, not a lot of people stayed around. If they majored in that, they went off to these bigger cities where there's more opportunity. So we really bonded over the fact we have this great skill set that not a lot of people have here. And so that's where kind of this friendship blossomed. And we stayed in touch. We probably texted a couple times a month. If I had questions, I'd reach out. And then I had our second child. And right before I returned from maternity leave, my daycare that I was using, so let me soundbite. Let me rewind a little bit. So right before I gave birth to my second child, the daycare that my son went to closed due to a child abuse scenario where he was unfortunately involved. It wasn't a huge deal. Obviously, some mishandling of children that didn't need to happen, but the center was inevitably shut down because of that. So I was left right before I had this new baby with no care lined up for her, no care for him. He is a high energy toddler. And I was like, I cannot have this high energy toddler at home with a newborn. So we got him into new care, but then I was inevitably left without a nursery for her when I went back to work. And I found somebody really last minute that I felt really good about with what we went through with my son and the child abuse case at his past daycare. I was not about to leave her with anyone I didn't feel 100% confident with. But about a week before I went back to work, she told me, hey, I'm going to not work on Mondays, because she's actually working to open a daycare, because that's a goal for her. And at the time in my head, I was like,
She's also a young working
young
mom.
working mom, paving a way for herself. I was like, I believe in you. I'm still going to move forward with you. Absolutely. I'll figure it out with my job. Shouldn't be a problem, because I'd worked for years remote for a very lucrative, very successful PR agency out of Louisville. I was like, this shouldn't be an issue. And it was a huge issue. Huge issue. It did not end up working out. Very unfortunate situation, but it inevitably led me to text Nora and say, this has really kind of gotten ugly. I'm not quite sure what to do next. And she was like, well, I actually have a ton of work I need help with. I have more work than I can say grace over. Help me out while you're looking for this next opportunity. And I was like, this is perfect. And here we are, partners. It's been 6 months, and I can touch briefly on some of the services we offer. So Stay and Tell is a PR and strategic communications agency. It's more of a collaborative. We work with smaller businesses in the area who have these great stories to tell, but they might not necessarily have the budget for something that you would see at maybe a larger agency or in a larger city where some of those agencies may be. So we work with a lot of different clients that touch on economic development and kind of provide support back to that larger ecosystem in our communities. And yeah, that's our passion. We've really enjoyed being a small business, giving back to other small businesses.
And that's wonderful. I mean, in yours, pointing out too, it's that drive to try to juggle all those things. And a lot of times it's just, if and they're not willing to give you that flexibility. So when we had that more of that virtual setting, remote work, and then it seems like a lot of people, it went, we had that shift, and then everybody was expected to rejuggle their lives again. And so that was difficult.
Definitely. Yeah, the abrupt halt of no one's fault. I mean, it was just life as we knew it. We were trying to all adapt. Okay, now we're completely virtual. You can do your job completely virtually now. Okay, just kidding. We're changing that, and you have to go back in person, and you have to adjust to living your life completely behind a desk, when we all knew there was life beyond that. We all knew that that's not the way it had to be.
Yeah, the capabilities. And I mean, a lot of larger things are at play here, right? And we could go on about the childcare crisis in this country and what people deal with on the daily when it comes to good quality, affordable childcare. Also, if you're lucky enough to live near family, a lot of people don't live near family anymore, so they don't have that help. But also, our parents are having to work longer than our grandparents did. And so some of us that were able to have childcare, I stayed with my grandparents a ton. They fortunately got to retire pretty early. I don't have that luxury with my parents because they did have to work longer. So there's a ton of things that I think come into play when we talk about women in the workforce and what does that look like now in 2025. And now that we know of the capabilities of being able to not have to report to an office, there's a lot of power in employees now in saying, no, I really don't have to do that.
I actually don't. Like, I
Yeah.
actually know I can do my job really well, and I don't
Yeah.
have to be behind a desk. Yeah.
That is true. It gave employees a little bit more, I don't want to say power, but to make decisions for themselves that they probably before they felt like they couldn't. It's like you either go and show up and be at your job and work with the way they tell you, or that's it.
Hmm.
And,
Yep.
and now, how did because you both came from larger areas, how have you brought like that media industry, those skills to aid businesses in like a smaller type area? What are some of the things you're doing?
Sure. So this question, it kind of goes back to a larger kind of scale of, or just a larger like understanding of the ecosystem of public relations. There are a lot of things that go into public relations. There are a lot of tactics that fall within that bucket. Media relations is one of the things that you will see more in larger cities for several reasons. The journalists will tend to be in those larger cities because they're working at those news conglomerates in those larger cities. Not to say there aren't journalists here, but there are more publications in a top media market. So as a PR professional, you work hand in hand with those journalists, and we can't do our jobs without journalists. So being the proximity helped with that. But then also PR support, like those jobs, those PR jobs tend to follow the larger businesses too, because they tend to have more resources for those types of jobs to pay that sort of service. So, that was always something I thought about when I wanted to move back home was South Central Kentucky. While I adore it and I always knew I wanted to come back home, how am I going to have this career that I want without necessarily the resources and the opportunities that I would have found in a bigger city like Louisville? So our approach was we've taken some of those tools that we've learned through our time and adapted them on a smaller scale. So, we understand that some of these businesses that may have these fabulous stories, these generational businesses that have these great founder stories that may not have the resources to pay for an agency, we've scaled back what we can provide and been able to service them with just us two, if that answers the question.
Yeah, and it's like if you've ever been to this area of Kentucky or Kentucky in general, friendly people. We're very trusting. We love our neighbors. We're always taking care of the person next door. You're always looking out for someone. And so starting a PR agency and wanting to tell the stories of our neighbors and making it to where it's approachable for them versus them thinking, well, that's kind of out of reach. That's like a big city thing. Larger agencies, you're talking like 100 people on staff. When you're hiring Lauren and I,
It's us.
it is us. You are getting us. Like we are Kentucky girls through and through. We get it. We know that you're running your great grandfather's business, and you want to bring it into 2025, and you want to figure out how you get your story online and how you adapt to AI and through PR, all the above. Yeah, I thought,
It's we've
yeah.
taken we've taken what we've learned and made it approachable, affordable, and tailored to our local community, I think is a great way of putting it.
Right. Oh, yeah, definitely. And like, what are some of the services? I mean, I know like there's, press release, obviously getting in. Do you like, what are some of the things that you offer?
So, and Nora will jump into with this. So, media relations is one of the bigger things that we offer, and we're behind a computer, but we can reach anyone we need to as far as journalists are concerned. If the networks are in place, and you can pay for the services to get their contact information and develop that rapport. It's available to anyone to do. You just need the background and the knowledge to do that. So that's something that we offer. Beyond that, we help with event planning, event hosting, event execution. The larger bucket of PR, there's also the community relations aspect, which we really enjoy, influencer relations. Something we're also getting into is, and this is a larger conversation that we could go on forever, but it's converting the earned media, so the media that you would get from the online article that you received, converting that into crawlable resources for your website that AI can scan and populate you in those large language models. So that's something else we're offering to businesses around the area, not just around the area. We have clients back in Louisville. Here we are again, back in Louisville, that span across the state. So what else?
Yeah, oh gosh. I always say so any strategic way that you or your business, because we represent some individuals too, a strategic way you or your business want to show up as your best self digitally or in person. So whether that's we're prepping them for a public speaking gig or showing up, on a morning news show. So a couple of in-person things like that. But then also, how are you showing up on your social media channels? How are you showing up on your website? The above. Because at the end of the day, it goes back to reputation.
First impressions.
Yeah.
Yep. Reputation and first impression. So making sure we're working with, making sure the clients that we're working with they're getting the reputation management and first impression that they want when they're getting in front of their target audiences.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kind of like their brand and making sure it's like the right image that they're putting out. And now, what are your goals for, I guess, the future? What do you see? Where do you see things going? What are some of the goals you have set?
That's like, I don't
Yeah,
know,
that
being an entrepreneur, we're always like, "Well, today's a new day."
right.
And then your kid wakes up 5 times in the night and you have an 8 a.m. meeting. That is, I always say, if we, like, forget something or we have to run something to the daycare or somebody has to pick up early, I'm always like, "Isn't it nice that we have the flexibility to do these things?"
And the understanding, the collective understanding between two moms of
Yeah.
like, we get it. We know exactly what the other one's going through. We know exactly what it's like to balance a career. We've literally been in each other's shoes. We're living very similar lives, both personally and professionally. So having that mutual understanding is so important with finding someone you want to partner with in a business. As far as long-term goals go, we've had several discussions. We would like to see the agency collaborative grow, and we'd like to continue expanding. We actually just brought on a contractor. She's not an official employee, of course, because we are not in a position where we can hire a full-time employee yet, but she is a contractor. She's very bright. She has a lot of great experience. And that was a huge step for us because we're like, oh my gosh, we've been doing this for 6 months and we've already grown enough where we're able to provide this flexibility, these opportunities to a younger person who's starting their career out. So that's been awesome. And I anticipate that it's going to be a lot of that for the next several months, scaling, figuring out how to grow while also doing what we set out to do, which is be there for our kids, be there to support our family, show up as friends, wives, whatever the role may look like. We're not just employees behind a desk.
Yes, and, touching back on doing it for our kids, the agency is really rooted in the community. It's community based, and Lauren and I are here for the foreseeable future because we are raising kids here. You'll see something behind us called What Could Be GB. People are more than welcome to look it up. It's a larger project, but where we're living, it is expected to double in size by 2050. So you talked about your growth in Fort Myers. Our area is seeing the same exact growth. And so our community is figuring out how we navigate that. And as our judge executive says, how do we make sure it happens for us and not to us? But I say that because when we think about long term goals, the opportunities here are pretty endless. And because of the growth, because of people moving here, who knows where Lauren and I and State and Tell will end up. But we're here rooted in the community to help. And there's a very strong entrepreneurship community ecosystem here. I say my network is the reason why I was able to step out. And there's um, something to be said about everybody here in Bowling Green. Everybody is your biggest cheerleader. We've received so much support.
Endless support. I mean, it's really crazy. It's truly
It's
crazy.
like every time we turn, someone is providing a tip or giving us another opportunity. They really want to see us succeed. We spend a lot of time at the WKU Innovation Campus, which is a large ecosystem of startups, small businesses. So we're in the right place. And then I would say I call him a mentor. Sometimes he says he's a client, and I'm like, oh, okay.
The
But
nuances.
yes, Sam Ford is a big, huge help to us. He also has a small business here called NO Engine. But yeah, we have a ton of cheerleaders, which is what you need when you're a working mom. People that get it and
Believe in you.
wanna see you succeed.
Yeah.
So, long-term goals, it's looking great, but it
Sky's the
changes
limit.
every day.
Depends on who is sick,
Yeah.
who needs to be picked up from daycare early, but the sky is the limit and the opportunities are endless and the infrastructure is being put in place with the town as a whole. That, like Nora said, the opportunities that are coming down the pipeline are truly endless. So
Yeah, and you have an opportunity to help shape it too. And that was what another thing with our area is a lot more people are realizing, getting in, like, being the voices for, the small businesses and the area, the growing in the right way, like you kind of mentioned.
right. Exactly. We're excited.
Mhm.
It's been every day I've woken up. I've been super excited to see what the day will hold. Like Nora mentioned, we have an amazing network. I feel like every week we've got a new business referral. My husband's like, "What do you mean you have a new meeting? What what do you mean? How is, and I'm like, it's crazy. It's really something. The community is really something."
being there. Now, do you take national clients? Is it just local? Like if people wanted to kind of find out more?
We're open to any opportunity. If anything we've said has really resonated with someone who's been looking for someone to help tell their story, we're absolutely open to conversations. We've just, like Nora mentioned, we're rooted in the community. We're proud to support the community as it needs us here, but we're open to having conversations with anyone.
On a national, and what would be the best way for people to, I guess, would it go to the website to find you? You have social media?
Yeah, so we're on social media, State Intel. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And then the best way to get in touch with us would be our website, stateintel.com. And our emails are there in the info area, and they can learn more about some of our.
All right, wonderful. And I guess just to wrap it up, I know, do you think we're gonna see, more of this type of, I guess, kind of like calling it the gig economy, or just people saying, "You know what, I think I wanna take that step and take that step in entrepreneur and, see if I can make it and take a chance on myself."
I hope so. I mean, I hope so. It's been the best decision I could have made is betting on myself. And I think Nora can probably relate to that, going out on her own initially and starting this business that I joined. You sometimes just got to bet on yourself and don't underestimate moms. I love being underestimated. Like, please, please tell me I can't do something. Please. So I hope any woman out there listening who's maybe hesitating, but within that toxic work environment and exhausted because she can't keep up with everything, I hope maybe this pushes her to take that step. We believe in you.
Yeah, very much so. There, your new network is out there, or your new ecosystem. Definitely betting on yourself, and there's room for everybody. I
Everyone at
always
the
say
table.
everyone at the table, collaboration over competition. The goal of State and Tell is really to create a world where everyone's here to bring their ideas, their causes, where businesses can thrive, and how we can launch stories that promote progress and empathy and meaningful connections, especially in a world where you see lots of arguments online. We're in a very, we won't get into all that,
The
but
device, the
Right.
device online
yes.
environment and just what you're seeing everywhere. It's
Hi, man.
True.
Yes.
exhausting.
State and Tell is here to remind everyone that we are all in this together. It is human connection, and how we launch these stories and promote ourselves, I think is key.
Yeah, no, I think we covered a lot of different stuff, and just the main thought is that we're all human too. And it's like sometimes I feel like people put a lot of pressure. You got to do more, you got to be more, you got to accomplish more. And it's like at the end, I mean, people are kind of breaking down because it's just so much, especially on, I don't want to say only, it's on men and women, but women who, predominantly still have, the job of raising kids. It's a lot.
It's a big job. Big job for just one person.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I really appreciate you both joining us today.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
great. Happy to talk
Thank
about it.
you.
Thank you. And hopefully maybe we could have you again down the road and talk about like where things are at that point and the growth that you're experiencing.
That'd be
Oh,
great.
yeah,
Yeah.
most definitely.
Thank you. Thank you for joining the Business Roundup, where we always try to bring you interviews with some of the leading people in business, whether it be technology, finance, or energy. I hope you tune in. I hope you subscribe and listen, and we'll give you updates for new interviews that are coming up. Until next time, I'm Melissa Bill.